Summary of the Children of Men by P.D. James. It's the 1st of January in the year 2021. The world is in the midst of a mass infertility disaster that has been going on for 25 years. Theo Faron, an Oxford scholar and cousin of Xan Lippiatt, the dictator and warden of England, writes in his new diary about the confusion, pain, and chaos the world has been through. Humanity has been demoralized and humiliated not only by its inability to reproduce, but also by its inability to find a cause or a cure for the infertility problem. The last baby was born in 1995, which is now known as year Omega, and there is no hope that another woman will ever get pregnant again. The people of the world are all in a bad mood, and a new political order has come into place. The Omegas, who were born in 1995, is a group of godlike, beautiful, and cruel people who are known to form gangs, paint their faces, and terrorize people who were not born in 1995. The authoritarian state is kept in line by the state security police, which sends prisoners to an unknown penal camp on the Isle of Man. Theo has kept his job as a teacher at Oxford, but his students don't see the point in studying history, which they call the least rewarding discipline for a dying species. This makes Theo think about his past, first about his relationship with Xan, who has taken control of Britain with the help of a small, loyal council. Theo was once Xan's advisor. During this time, journalists said that the two were as close as brothers, but Theo says that even when they spent the summers together at Woolcombe, the home of Xan's family, they were never so close. Theo then thinks back on how he didn't know much about his father's stomach cancer while he was in and out of the hospital and slowly getting worse. At his father's funeral, people told Theo that he was now the man of the family, but Theo, then and now, has never wanted anyone to look to him for protection, for happiness, or for love. For years, Theo had nightmares in which his father stood at the foot of his bed and pointed at him with the bloody stump of his arm. The dream started happening again after Theo killed Natalie, but now his father never comes. Theo talks about how he accidentally ran over his 15-month-old daughter Natalie with his car as he was pulling out of the garage. The terrible thing that happened drove a gap between Theo and his wife Helena that they never got over. She recently left him for Rupert Clavering, a younger guy. Theo goes to services at a nearby church, where he sees a new woman who he used to be in school with. The woman comes up to him after services, and Theo sees that one of her hands is misshapen. He says that this saves her from the twice-yearly exams that all healthy young women have to go through. The woman, whose name is Julian, says to Theo that she has come to him because she and a small group of friends want to stop all the bad things that are happening in Britain. Her group knows that Theo is the warden's cousin, and they want to get him to take their complaints to the council on their behalf. Theo says that he will meet up with her group. Theo goes to see Jasper Palmersmith, his old teacher. Since the year Omega, Jasper has moved to the country and stocked up on food, fuel, and medicine. Theo is shocked by how quickly Jasper seems to be getting older when he goes to his house. Jasper's wife, Hilda, is even more old and messy. Jasper asks Theo if he can move in with Theo in Oxford because he has started to feel isolated in the country. Jasper says that Hilda has been thinking about taking part in a quietus, which is a group of old people who drown themselves as part of a rite. Theo meets Julian's group at a nearby church. There, Rolf, Julian's husband and the group's head, introduces him to Miriam, a former midwife, Luke, a priest, and Gascoigne, a truck driver. The group tells Theo that they haven't done anything yet, but that they have a list of things they don't like about the state. They want to call for a general election, stop the government-run sperm testing program and the mandatory gynecological exams, end the quietus, and give the sojourners, foreign immigrants who are treated like slaves, legal rights. Theo admits that he has no influence with the Warden of England and that he never has. Julian tells Miriam that she should tell Theo about her brother, so she does. After pushing a woman to the ground and taking her purse, Miriam's brother was sent to the Isle of Man penal colony, where he was treated horribly. He ran away to Miriam's house, but the state security police found him and took him away after only a few hours. They sent Miriam his ashes. Theo tells the group that the country is ready to put up with a lot of bad behavior as the price of good government, and that the group's goal of changing human hearts and minds has no chance of happening. Rolf says that Theo met with them even though he knows he'll never go to the council. In response, Theo says that he wants to see a quietus before making a final choice about the group. Julian tells him that in 3 days, one will be held close by. Theo says that he will let the group know what happened after he has seen it. Theo goes to the quietus and sees old women in white robes getting ready to jump into the sea. Hilda is one of them, and it seems like she was put in the quietus against her will. Hilda falls into the water after a man in charge of the event hits her on the head. Theo tries to save her, but it's too late. Theo himself falls into the water and is about to drown when a wave pulls him back to shore. Back in Oxford, Theo puts a note on a church wall for Julian's group to find. The note only has one word on it: yes. He says, though, that going to see Zan has less to do with the horror of the quietus than with his humiliation over not being able to save Hilda. A driver named Hedges shows up to take Theo to London so he can meet Zan there. On their way into town, they see a group of religious extremists self-flogging themselves in a park. When Theo asks Hedges if he believes in God, Hedges tells Theo that he thinks mass infertility was God's final intervention in the mess of humanity. At Zan's office, the whole council is in front of Theo. Theo looks down at the expensive coronation ring that Zan wears on his hand. Theo is upset that he didn't get a private meeting with Zan, but Zan says that they're just getting together like old friends after 3 years. Theo describes the murder, quietus he witnessed, then questions the council about the man penal colony, the sojourners, and the compulsory testing of men and women, asking Zan to do away with the degrading policies with one signature. Zan tells Theo that his concern would have more weight if he were still sitting with the council, and dismisses him brusquely. When Theo and Hedges get back to the car, Zan comes out of the building and offers to go for a walk with Theo in the park. Zan asks Theo if he's been told by someone else to go to the council, saying that Theo couldn't have thought these things through on his own. Theo says that he lives in the real world and that every day he hears people's problems. Zan tells Theo, tell his friends to be sensible. Zan is not a tyrant, but he can't afford to be merciful. Theo meets Julian, who also goes by the name Jules, at a museum when he gets back to Oxford. He tells her that Zan knew that someone was the reason he went to London. Theo tells Jules not to waste her life on a useless cause. He also tells her to stay away from Rolf, who is dragging her into danger to satisfy his own ambitions. Jules tells Theo that she must stay with the group because it is God's will. She thanks Theo for all he has done, and they go their separate ways. 2 weeks later, a leaflet with Julian's group's list of requests from the government shows up on Theo's doorstep. The piece of paper is signed by the 5 fishes. Theo tears it up and flushes it down the toilet, but for a moment he wishes he could share the passion and folly that the 5 fishes have. Theo gets a visit from 2 people from the State Security Police, SSP. Chief Inspector George Rawlings and his partner, Sergeant Oliver Cathcart, who is an Omega, ask Theo if he knows anything about the activities of certain people. Bombs have recently gone off at 2 quietuses, and the flyers have not gone unnoticed. Theo tells the police that, as the warden's cousin, he will report any threats or news of sedition straight to the warden. Once the men leave, he thinks about telling the fishes, but he has no way to get in touch with them and is afraid of being watched even if he did. He decides there is nothing else he can do but wait. Julian and Theo meet at a market, and Theo tells Julian that the SSP came to see him. He tells Julian that she needs to stop working with the fishes. He tells her that she can send him to St. John Street if she ever needs him. But as soon as they part ways, Theo chooses to escape on a trip around Europe to try to forget what has happened in the past few weeks. A few months later, Theo returns to Oxford after a trip that deepened his sense of impending disaster. A week after his return, Miriam knocks on the door while he is making dinner. She tells Theo that Julian has finally sent for him because Gascoigne is in police custody and the group has to run away. Theo grabs his coat and diary while Miriam fills a bag with food, and the two of them run to Theo's car. Theo finds out from Miriam that Julian is pregnant. Theo doesn't believe her, but he drives her to the group's fallback meeting place, where the fishes are waiting. Julian goes up to Theo and shows him her swollen belly. Theo tells the fishes that instead of running away, they should tell the warden about Julian's pregnancy and make sure she is safe that way. Julian thinks that if the warden has anything to do with the birth of her child, both she and the child will die. Theo decides to run away with the group, even though he and Rolf insult each other. Rolf tells Theo that he doesn't have any guts and that he was only called because his connection to Zan is useful. Miriam begs the two to stop fighting. Theo suggests that the group go to Jasper's because he plans to let Jasper stay at his house if the group stays at Jasper's. Theo goes to Jasper's house and finds it open. Inside, Jasper's dead body is sitting in an armchair, covered in blood and feces. He has killed himself. Theo knows they can't stay, so he takes Jasper's revolver, shoots the last bullet out of it, and puts the bullet in his pocket while Miriam gets groceries. Then, they switch cars from Theo's to Jasper's and get back on the road. Miriam and Luke take Julian to the toilet so the group can stop. Rolf tells Theo that he thinks Julian's child will be called the new Adam and given complete power once it is born. He wants Theo to be his advisor if that happens. Theo tells Rolf that once Zan sees him as a danger, the government will take what they need from him, his sperm, and get rid of him. When a tire goes flat, the group has to stop on the side of the road until morning. The next day, the group rests while Rolf fixes the car. Theo writes in his diary that he feels happy and at peace with the 5 fishes and that he no longer needs his diary because he is no longer the self-centered, sarcastic, lonely man who wrote most of its entries. Back on the road, the group comes across a downed tree trunk that forces them to stop. Theo realizes it's a trap just as a group of wild omegas with painted faces rushes them. The omegas are going to dance around Julian's car and try to break into it while the rest of the group does a death dance as a cover while Julian runs away. The plan seems to be working until one omega goes after Julian. Luke screams for the omegas to take him instead, and they do. The rest of the group hides while they tear him apart. Julian is determined to get Luke's body and hide it after the omegas have finished their ritual killing and left. Theo asks Miriam whose child she is carrying when he sees Julian being kind to Luke. Julian tells Theo that the baby is Luke's. Rolf, who is angry, leaves the group. While Julian stands over Luke's body, Miriam tells Theo that Julian has started to fall in love with him and that Luke, like Julian, was protected from government testing because he had seizures as a child. Rolf comes back to the group. Luke is buried when the sun comes up, but Rolf doesn't do anything to help Theo, Miriam, and Julian with the ceremony. After that, they all lay down together to rest. When they wake up early in the evening, they find out that Rolf has left them and taken the car. Theo knows that Rolf will go to London and tell Zan that Julian is pregnant. Zan will then look for their group. Theo plans to go to the nearest town at night and steal a car, water, and supplies. At night, he walks for 2 hours to the nearest town and chooses a house where he can see an old couple watching TV. He makes them afraid with the stolen gun and ties them up on their bed. They ask for water and to use the toilet, and Theo gives in because he feels bad. They tell him that their housekeeper will come in the morning, and Theo tells them that if they scream before then, no one will hear them because he will leave their TV on. Theo takes some disappointing things from their kitchen, then steals their car. As he drives back to Miriam and Julian, he has a dream that they find an idyllic, empty cottage and hide there for as long as they need to. When Theo finds Miriam and Julian, Miriam tells him that Julian is in labor and they need to find a place to stay quickly. Theo drives through the night to the edge of Wickwood Forest, where he used to go walking and where he remembers there is an abandoned woodshed. The 3 of them get ready to dump the car in a lake, but then they hear an announcement on the radio about a group of dissidents led by Theo Faron of Oxford. As they get closer to the cottage, they hear helicopters flying above, but they make it to the woodshed before they are found. Miriam makes Julian a temporary bed, and Theo starts a fire. Soon, Julian gives birth to a baby boy, and the joy is almost too much for Theo to bear. In his excitement, Theo spills a kettle full of water, so Miriam goes out to get more water, even though she might be seen. Miriam hasn't come back after an hour, so Julian begs Theo to go find her. Julian is firm, even though he wants the two of them to be together when Zan comes. Theo goes to a nearby house and finds Miriam's body, which was killed by being choked. He drags her body out of the house and puts it under a tree, promising to get revenge for her. He goes back to the shed, and he and Julian both feel sad about Miriam's death. Julian is fed by Theo, and Julian's mum worries that she and Julian will be split up when Zan comes. Theo tells her that nothing will ever come between them. Soon, Zan will show up. Theo puts the last bullet left in Jasper's handgun and meets him outside. Theo says that Julian is pregnant, but he doesn't say that the baby has already been born. Zan says he doesn't want to scare Julian and has brought everything she needs. Theo asks Zan to say what he plans to do. Zan tells Theo that if Julian's child is a boy, that child will be the father of a new race and may even be able to breed again, with Julian herself. Zan says he wants to marry Julian and take care of her, then tells Theo to go inside and convince Julian to come with him. Zan takes aim with his gun and fires when Theo hesitates. He doesn't hit, but Theo shoots back and hits Zan in the heart. Theo takes the ring off Zan's finger, and the members of the council come out of the woods. Theo tells them that the baby has been born and takes them into the shed to see Julian and her boy. While the council fawns over the child, Theo laments that a new cycle of life has begun with jealousy, violence, and murder. He plans to take Zan's place for a time. There are evils to be remedied. Julian questions why Theo has donned the coronation ring, and Theo is momentarily irritated, but assures her he will take it off in time. Theo reaches out and makes the sign of the cross on Julian's child's forehead.
About the author. Phyllis Dorothy James was born in 1920 in Oxford to parents who didn't think women should go to school. When she was 16, she dropped out of high school because she wanted to become a writer. James's goals were put on hold for a while by marriage, family, and the destruction and chaos of World War II. During the war, she worked as a Red Cross nurse, and when it was over, she had to support her family because her husband's PTSD was so bad and dangerous. After getting a job in hospital management, James wrote in the mornings before going to work. Many of her early books were set in hospitals. She started writing mystery stories because she loved the genre and wanted to use it to say something true about men and women, their relationships, and the society in which they live. She overcame her fear of violence by writing scary tales like Innocent Blood, The Children of Men, and Death Comes to Pemberley, which have sold more than 10 million copies in the US alone. Fans all over the world loved her and called her the Queen of Crime. She died at her home in Oxford at the age of 94. Her work is still being released after she died.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.